The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
Giving a voice to the voiceless, pulling stories out of the shadows and putting them under the spotlight, making sure that each person is valued and cared for. This is Humanity First with Peter Evers, presented by BAMSI.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Humanity First. My name is Peter Evers, your host and CEO at BAMSI. And today I think we're going to talk about something that's really relevant to so many people, and that is housing and the cost of housing in Massachusetts. It is no secret that Massachusetts is way up there in terms of the cost of getting on the ladder, and in fact all the way up the ladder in terms of house prices. Brockton has always been seen as a place where people could get on that ladder, a gateway community for people who are coming to this country for the first time, new Americans, but also people who really have lower incomes but are able to get on the ladder. What really frightens us all now is the cost of housing, and we're going to hear from Larry Hassan, who actually is a realtor from Keller Williamson, about what's happened in the housing market over the past 5 years and what that is doing and pinching those people, lower income families, and making it more and more difficult to find a place to live. But although it's really difficult at the moment, and we're in the middle of a war with Iran, which is not helping, there is light at the end of that tunnel. And we're going to talk about some of that light and what that means, what it means in terms of what's available through grants, what's available through mass housing, and some of those things that helped me get on the ladder in 1993, 94 are still available, but people just don't know enough about them. How can you get a loan with a down payment of 3%, and how much help can you get with that, and what are some of the provisos for that? So we're going to talk about that with Larry, talk about the difficulty, but also some of the solutions for young families who are looking to get on that ladder, which gives them transgenerational wealth, which all families are looking for. So stick around. Larry Hassan next. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Jamie. I'm an essential worker here at BAMSI, and I'm a nurse. Nurses are essential here at BAMSI because as nurses, we really have the opportunity to make an impact. We have very small ratios, so we have the opportunity to really learn everything about the person served and be able to give the best care. It really serves such a great purpose for me as being a nurse, and really why I came into nursing. Learn more about nursing opportunities at bamsijobs.org.
Giving a voice to the voiceless, pulling stories out of the shadows and putting them under the spotlight, making sure that each person is valued and cared for. This is Humanity First with Peter Evers, presented by BAMSI.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to Humanity First. And as promised at the top of the show, we have Larry Hassan with us. Larry, hi. Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you. Glad to be here and stepping in for Gene Fuller-Jones today.
Well, it's very nice of you. And from the conversations that we had, we're going to have a great conversation today. So Larry is a realtor associate at Keller
Williamson
Easton.
I live in Brockton.
And a Brockton resident. And how appropriate that we're going to talk a little bit about housing in Brockton today. And, at the top of the show, Larry, I spoke about how difficult living in Massachusetts is at the moment if you want to get on the housing ladder. And one of the things that I always thought about Brockton, where I have worked on and off for 30-something years, is that it always has been a gateway town. It has been somewhere that is welcoming for people from wherever they come from in the world or within the state or the US. And there's always been a chance for somebody to get on the housing ladder. And we know that transgenerational wealth in America is principally built on the ability to buy a home for most Americans. That is getting more and more difficult in this state. And by the way, it's a wonderful state to live in, and I love living here. But one of the problems is that it gets more and more difficult to execute that if you're coming to this country as a new American, or if you're working in one of the essential employments and your pay has not kept up with inflation or house prices. So let's begin, if we can, by talking about a few of the numbers. Is that borne out that it is more difficult now than it was at the beginning of COVID to buy a home?
Based on the way the numbers have gone, I would say yes. The quick information as far as when we're talking specifically about the Brockton market, and I took a look back from 2021, the rental market, the average rental price range, and this is an average, was around $1,900. Today, it's about, I had some notes here, it's about almost $2,700 a month for rent. Single family homes, 2021, your average sale price was around $415. Today, it's about $518. Because back then in 2021, also too, the mortgage rate was 3%. Today, again, these are estimates, but today we're probably hovering around 6.5%.
Wow. So that basically answers the question. And there's probably some people listening to this saying, yeah, we know that because that's what we're living through. And when we talked originally, and I came to this country in 1990, my wife was pregnant. We didn't have anywhere to live. I didn't have a job. I didn't have health insurance. I was always a good planner, that kind of thing. But one of the things was that we started renting in Somerville. And after a few years, we were able to cobble a little bit of money together. And we stumbled across the MHFA loan, which allowed us to put 3% down and really and be eligible for some of the grants and things like that. And we would not have been able to do that. My wife wasn't working, and I was a direct care worker. But because of that, we got our sort of feet on the bottom rung of the ladder, if you like. And when you said that about rental, I mean, you're renting a home where you could actually be paying a mortgage and creating generational wealth. And then, it's yours after 30 years or whatever. And,
Right.
So is that still available?
So this is a question or a discussion that comes up all the time with first-time home buyers. What are you paying for rent now? If you're renting, some of them are still living at home.
That's right.
But if they're paying rent, we always try to translate that discussion from what you're paying for rent now, even though you're going to probably pay a little bit more on your mortgage. After your first 2 or 3 years in that home, you're starting to build up equity. And again, you're talking to a real estate person. I've been doing this for 41 years. Real estate is still a good value. It's still a great place to put your money, but it becomes your home. You're not paying your money to a landlord. With the mass housing financing, it's still a program that's very available. They allow the buyer to go in with 3% down. They do have grant monies available in certain towns and certain counties, I believe, but that would be more for a lender to explain to us. I don't want to send people off in the wrong direction. However, I do know with the mass housing loan with 3% down, they can also qualify children that are living in the home that are 18 years old or that are working to help with the mortgage payment.
Hold on, that's really important, right? Because, when I was going through that process in 1994, we paid $97,000 for a single family home in Somerville. That home now is worth 10 times that much.
I believe it.
Yeah, and 3% of 97 is doable.
Yeah.
Right. 3% of $1 million is not.
Yeah.
Or
Even now, you're right. 3% of, if you're looking at the average price range, 3% of $518,000, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. And the ability to include total household income, because as you say, we're moving back a little bit to the 1950s when kids would always stay with their parents until they got married, right? And maybe we've been forced into that situation because of the price of single family house. So in that sense, it's good that you're able to sort of build those incomes in to get to a point where you can get that.
And that, I believe, is with just the mass housing.
Yes.
Because there are other programs like FHA, which is a great program. It's not specifically a first-time home buyer program. However, they do allow you to have co-signers that aren't living in the home. And they also allow you to have a family member give some money towards a down payment to help.
Yeah, which is helpful for a lot of people, especially for those parents who want their kids out of the home, right? Just kidding, everybody.
Hey, quick question. What were you paying for rent in 90? Would you remember? I'm just curious what the rent was in
it's funny
Somerville.
Yeah, we lived on College Avenue in Somerville in a 3-family, 3 flights up, with a couple of babies. We were paying somewhere in the region of $700 a month.
It's probably quadrupled now.
Yeah, I thought that was outrageous when we got there. But compared to your income.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's really important that people know what their options are. I've spoken to young people who have given up. I'll be honest with you. They just say, well, I'm never going to own a home. And actually, this last couple of generations have a different view of home ownership than perhaps boomers and Gen X people do. But at the same time, what you said is so important. It is still really good value to own a home.
Yes.
Right? Wherever you are, especially in Massachusetts, you think about a couple of things. One is, I know mortgage tax relief is slightly different now because of the increase in the deduction that people have, but that's an option, right? That people who rent don't have, right? That although some places give some rental relief, like Boston, so there's that. But then there's the ability, because a lot of young people get into debt with credit cards, right? If you build up equity in your home, you have the ability to take an equity line and reset. So it gives you more flexibility in managing your life and all of the things that are put in front of you.
Just the sense of security owning your own home.
Yeah.
And it's not all doom and gloom. I don't know if you want me to go over some of the examples I have on some of the other properties that, if you're ready for me to go through that, I'll explain it. But
I think it would be great, because I think the message that I'd love people to walk away with is that, yes, this is hard. Yes, there's been a lot of changes. COVID probably had some effect on those things. Interest rates spiked. Right. They've come down again. I don't think they'll ever get back to like 2.5%.
Well, I don't think we'll ever see 3% again, but we were getting close to 5.5% until some of the current situations have occurred. So,
well, let me just say that when I bought my first home, which was in the UK, in the southeast of England, the interest rate was 18% in 1986. So
1985, when I got into business, I think the interest rates were around 12, 13%.
Yeah.
But you could buy a home for $79,900.
That's right. There's a trade-off there. Yeah. Right. So it is the educational piece is there are ways in which you can utilize what's out there. And I absolutely would ask people to go to Claude, ChatGPT, Copilot, and just put in there, how can I finance a new home? Right. And it is AI is so helpful in that way. So please do that.
Absolutely. And there's plenty of great local lenders that you can contact online that you don't have to be obligated to get a pre-qualification. Every time in our world, every time that we meet with a new customer that's interested in buying a home, my first discussion with them is, who's your lender? Do you have your numbers figured out, your financial numbers figured out? Sometimes there are some people that they're starting the process, and it might take them 2 years to source all their funds and get their down payment monies together. And that might mean they're eating macaroni and cheese 5 nights a week to get there. But you know what? It's worth it in the long run. Yeah. But right now, there's still, even in the Brockton market, I gave you some averages, but I've got a couple properties here that are currently on the market right now. One that just came on yesterday, a 3-bedroom home for $429,000. So that's quite a bit below the average. Yeah. And if you're putting 3% down, again, these are estimates only because I can't be quoting, but they're estimates. Somebody's, you're going to need about $13,000 for a down payment, which some of that can be gift funds from a family member. The rate is roughly about 6.5%. Again, it's an estimate, but your total mortgage payment with your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance is about $3,265. And if you're at the upper end of the rental market, you might have to tighten your belt a little bit to do that. But this particular home that I looked at looked like it was in very good shape. You could move into the home. Didn't seem like you would need to have to do a lot of work.
Yeah.
And there's other prices out there too. There's another one out there for $400,000. Same scenario with the down payments and all that. And you're looking at about $3,300 a month for everything to own a home instead of renting.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that people have to think about, and it's funny, Larry, I was talking at our orientation when new workers come in, and we have one of those icebreaker questions was, what do you do for fun? People have difficulty answering that question quite often. But this person said, what do you do for fun? And he goes, lol, I work. And I said, yeah, but what do you do after work? And he said, I work.
2 jobs.
Yeah, he works 2 jobs.
Yeah.
And I think certainly, that is something that a lot of us have had to do. And you went back, you referenced the macaroni and cheese. Eat your fruits and vegetables, everybody. Yeah. But there are sacrifices that you have to make. Yeah. But still, that is a lot of money. And we're not talking really about the 1950s where there was one income in the family. There has to be 2 incomes in the family nowadays, for the most part, unless you are very wealthy. And those are some of the. And I just want to recognize that that is a lot of money for somebody who's earning, 50, 60,000 a year. You're both going to be having to work to do that.
And like you said, if you might have to take a second job for a period of a year or two, especially a younger generation, it won't kill you.
Right.
It won't kill you.
That's right.
It'll build character.
Yeah. But it builds wealth.
Yes.
And that's what we have to think about.
And I think anybody that really goes through that process, even if they only did it for a couple of years and then were able to eliminate the second job because now they might have a growing family because you want to, it's not just about buying a home, it's about bringing up a family, hopefully, too.
Yeah. But those are scenarios where there is hope.
There is
here, and just moving on to that. Let's talk about market forces for a little bit, because if you look back over the period of time that we've been talking about, there is nothing that has really outstripped buying a house.
It has not.
About it. I mean, the initial. If you put your money in the market, you wouldn't be guaranteed that much. And so it is the right thing to do. Are there things, do you think that, we're in the middle of a war at the moment, and that's really affecting gas prices and house prices?
I just filled up my oil the other day. Went from $3.79 to $5.50 a gallon in about 3 weeks.
Yeah. And those are all things that have...
but again, that's a fluctuating thing, excuse me.
Yeah. But, so market forces do affect house prices. They do affect the way in which people have additional income to put away for that kind of thing. And what we're now is not something that's going to last forever. That's something that will abate. And people might be thinking, well, I can't even think about that because I can't fill the car up. That will change, and we'll have lowering inflation and lowering of prices eventually, I should think. Hopefully we won't get into deflation and stagflation, things like that. But market forces do affect house prices,
yes,
right?
Absolutely. And we've seen the fluctuation. And another discussion that I always have with my buyer clients is that I look at them and I say, I expect that this would be a long-term purchase for you. If you're thinking you're going to be in for a year or two and get out, it's probably not a wise idea. But if you're thinking 5-10 years, you're going to be okay. And you're going to figure out how to be comfortable with that payment.
Yeah. I love that you said that, because I remember during house boom times, people were flipping houses. And somebody, I was talking about, wow, these people make a lot of money. And somebody said to me, your house is for living in. Your house is, and you need to make a commitment to that. And as long as people think that way, they're going to be okay, because you can see that there is nothing that gives you better returns.
I had a real estate trainer tell me a long time ago, we call it a home, not a house. You know what I mean? And it's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah.
I will, me personally, I live in the first home that we bought in 97, but I remember we went from a $475 a month rent to about $825 mortgage a month. And I was like, and I'm in real estate.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
But that was in 97.
It's almost like that rental chart that cost is like softening you up for what the mortgage price is going to be.
Exactly.
And when there isn't much in it, and by the way, a lot of people make a choice not to invest in a house. And, we could talk about the benefits of that. But as we talk about growing wealth, that's really the way that you do it. And there are people, of course, that will live in rental properties for the rest of their lives. But, there are risks to that as well. But as we think about the future, as we think about Brockton, it really still is a great place to live, right? And it's a great place to consider if you're a first-time buyer.
Yes, I grew up here. My parents were born in Brockton. My father owned a couple pharmacies in Brockton with a partner of his. My grandparents came from Lebanon to here, and they brought up family here. So we have a lot of deep roots here. So My wife's family did the same thing. They came from Italy to Brockton, and we're still here.
Yeah.
We're still here. And yeah, we've seen a lot of changes in Brockton. We see a lot of the redevelopment going on downtown, in the city, where it's a challenge, but they're getting there. It's going to take a little more time, but I think once they can get that central area really up and running again, it's only going to benefit the city.
Yeah.
So I just think real estate in the city of Brockton's got a lot of great opportunities for people in many areas.
Yeah. You know, one of my favorite guests to come on the show was the former mayor of Brockton, and hopefully we'll have the current mayor on as well. But Bob Sullivan would say exactly that. He would say, I'm a Brocktonian, I love this town. And what really bothers me, Larry, sometimes is when I put the news on and there's something going on at the high school and there's been some violence.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what goes on at the high school in terms of the good stuff, because there's so much. And so I love having that conversation about Brockton.
The school system is a great school system.
Yeah,
it absolutely is.
It really is. And it worries me that sort of that trope about Brockton that is on Channel 5 in Boston every night is what people hear. But this is a place where you can bring up a family and thrive. And there is a lot of stuff going on that is good in Brockton. So if you're listening outside of the Brockton area and you're considering a place to live, this is somewhere which is multicultural. This is somewhere which is accepting. This is somewhere which is on the move. And by the way, it's equidistant from Providence and from Boston. So and it's near Foxborough, so you can go and watch the New England Revolution. Yeah. Or the other team that plays there.
Boston Bruins, my team.
Yeah. So, Larry, you know, in summation, we are living through difficult times. There's you can't really dress that up at all. And people are struggling out there. But I think one of the things that I take away from what you said is it's about the long game. It's about, you know, a house is a home. Those two things that I'm really settling on. And there might be some sacrifices that you have to make early on to make sure that later on in your life, you have built your nest egg. Something maybe, you know, we're talking about transgenerational homes now. Somerville was very much like that. Many of the people that lived in the homes 100 years ago were still living, their families were still living in there. And that's a testament to the decisions that you make early on, which might seem like difficult decisions, but in the long run really pay off.
I can tell you just historical from when my father told me what he paid for the home that I grew up in on West Street in Brockton. He got it on the VA loan. I want to say it was like $21,000. He was nervous about that mortgage payment at the time. Whatever it was, it might have been $150 a month. So I think our challenges now, even though they might be a little bit stronger than they were back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, are still very similar. And it's just one of those things that you have to dig in. Like you said, you got to make a choice and a decision. And I think you'll be fine. I think it's, you know, I'm not going to tell it's all Pollyanna. There's some hard work and some bumps along the way. But I think the Brockton market and the real estate market, we're going to be okay.
Larry, I'm going to end there because that's a perfect place to finish. But I really appreciate you coming in.
Pleasure to be here.
I appreciate the advice you're giving to people, and I hope that people can sort of dig in a little more and don't lose hope about this, because there is hope. Larry, thank you so much for coming. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.